It's just after midnight, and I'm heading out on a 5-hour drive to a tiny little town in the northeastern part of Hokkaido. I'm on my way to photograph the great red-crowned crane, the tsuru, the tancho. This bird is a Japanese cultural icon and is the subject of artwork, poetry, children's crafts. It's a drugstore name as well as Japan Airlines logo. It is a symbol of loyalty, longevity, and beauty. These massive birds, once reserved for the tables of emperors, were hunted nearly to extinction when feudal restrictions were banished. A small, non-migratory population, guessed to be around 30 cranes, survived, and with conservation efforts, the numbers have continued to grow with approximately 2,000 cranes today. When I arrived at the bridge after sunrise, most photographers were already gone, except for a small group who were waiting for the cranes to fly. The light was flat and uninteresting, and the cranes were not really photographable. But just wait until later in the video when you see day 2's sunrise. It was spectacular. So this morning I arrived at the bridge, and basically my goal of that was to just suss it out. I'm going to be going again tomorrow morning, and I knew that the light this morning was going to be flat and uninteresting, and I really wanted to know what was I getting myself into? Where were some good angles? Where should I set up? And luckily I think I followed that rule of look behind you, and that while everybody is looking downriver to these cranes that are far into the distance, I looked on the opposite side of the bridge and there's 2 cranes right there. And yeah, that was a much better shot for me than the other way around. I took a few shots, but compared to the images that I captured at my next location, it's almost not worth showing it, except for the fact that it was the first time I ever saw or photographed a red-crowned crane, so naturally I was pretty stoked. So this shot will be a personal memento. I have driven maybe less than 10 minutes from the bridge to the main feeding ground for the cranes. This is the season where they're getting ready to mate, and so I should see lots of cranes dancing and giving me some nice dynamic poses. I see some of them flying in right now, knowing that feeding time is about to start. I followed the cranes to the sanctuary feeding grounds and was amazed at the beauty before me. Although it is mating season, they seem to be dancing for the fun of it. I felt like being a witness of the creation of some old ukiyo-e-style paintings of cranes. I wanted to capture something more artistic than these messy groups. They were fun to watch, but hard to photograph. Luckily, it started to snow and the cranes began to disperse a bit. Continued to switch between shooting B-roll and shooting stills. just waiting for little magical moments. I had just laid on the ground to try and get some low-angle shots when a pair broke off from the group, started to mate, and then celebrated with a magnificent pose. The crowning image of the day and probably my whole year. Here's the pièce de résistance. You know, I have to admit I had a lot of anxiety coming here today. I was thinking about all of the, high-level professional photographers that were coming here with all of the best and most expensive gear. And I had on good authority that Michael Yamashita was just here, National Geographic photographer, world-renowned, brilliant photographer, and he was just here. And, here I am with my enthusiast level gear, and I don't want to bag myself, but not world renowned yet. It wasn't the case when I arrived. It really was not just filled with the best of the best. It was people like me, some great gear surrounding me, and then some people with just their phones coming to see the red-crowned crane. Let me tell you a story. I'm going to throw it back to me at my desk, and then I'll meet you back here again. Last spring, my family moved to a new area of Sapporo, and we met some really lovely neighbors. We had some barbecues and some dinners together, and they took an interest in my photography. Now, the husband told me a story about his father, who was a truck driver for 30 years, and then upon retiring, he bought a camera and started doing photography. He traveled all over those places that he had been for 30 years and took some amazing photographs, and I'd love to share them with you. So please stay tuned to the end of this video, and I'll show you a slideshow of Ueda-san's photos. Now, my neighbors shared some of Ueda-san's gear with me. Tripod and some snowshoes, a dry box for my camera, among other things. And I'm really, really grateful for such a generous gift. But I think more so I'm inspired by Ueda-san's story. He started photography at 60 years old. He was not out for the glory or the fame or a comparison of being the best. He was out to take a good photo. And for the love of it, the exploration, that feeling of capturing a good shot. And I think that's a good reminder for me, especially in this situation where I'm feeling a bit of anxiety because of my maybe not best level gear. But it's not about a comparison. It shouldn't be. It's a good reminder of why I started this channel. For the love of it. I love exploring. I love the creative process, and I love sharing that with people. So, yeah, I'm going to go and I'm going to enjoy, and I'm not going to compare. And you should never let people bag you for not having the best gear. Take what you've got and do the best you can with it. So make sure you do it for the love of it. Ueda-san organized for me to visit a nearby temple that he designed and renovated parts of the interior. So that's our next destination. And by the way, when in Japan, you slurp your noodles. Don't be shy. So I'm on the way to this shrine, and the name of it is called Saikoji. Saiko. Sounds a bit dubious, but I assure you, it's safe. I think we're going to find out. Right, I'm gonna head inside and double check that, one, I've got the right place, and two, that I do have the permission to actually shoot here. So, see you soon. I indeed do have permission, and this is the right place. The interior of the temple was beautiful and ornate, and naturally cranes were the main feature of decoration. Yatsumura-san, the caretaker of Saikoji, gave me a tour and allowed me to film on the altar, which is typically not allowed. Being a place for funerals, ceremony, and prayer, I felt a little bit like I was disturbing the peace. But the beautiful artwork and decoration were enchanting. Hastily, I set up and took a shot before joining Yatsumura-san and his wife for some tea. So Yatsumura-san pulled out lots of things to show me, and they made me a cup of tea and gave me some chocolate biscuits and a couple of cans of hot coffee to take with me, and just were incredibly gracious, and wow, lovely people. I drove about 40 minutes to the city of Kushiro to spend the night, and a storm blew in on my way, and it made for some tricky driving the next morning. But I was out for some food and some drink, and I had a few of these before heading back to my hotel and crashing.
地震です。地震です。
Well, there was just a massive earthquake, and I'm okay. Seems like there's no tsunami warning. I'm right by the coast as well, and the epicenter was right off the coast of Kushiro, which is where I'm at. 6.1 on the Japanese scale, and the highest is 7. So, whew, yeah. I don't imagine I'm going to be getting much more sleep tonight. So, as I expected, not much quality sleep after that earthquake. My brain feels scattered and definitely not rested. Fingers crossed we have a good day or a good morning.
Yesterday there was sun and there was rain, beauty in the mundane, and as the light startled our eyes, we let go of disguise. And now there's something in the air and a sparkly shimmer.
Right, well, I've arrived at location. Blue hour is upon us. Sunrise is about 40 minutes away. I arrived a little bit later than I expected because the roads were super slick on the way up, and I really didn't want to end up in a ditch like a car that was being pulled out that I saw on the way. So what am I expecting to see this morning? I think that the photographers that really care about light as an element of their photography are going to be here this early, and that means that they're going to have long lenses and super fast lenses that are really good in low light. Now, I don't have a lens that's great in low light, so I'm going to have to try and compensate and bump up my exposure by bumping up my ISO. I'm using a Sigma 100 to 400 millimeter lens, and I'm throwing that on a crop sensor camera. So what that does is it actually gives me more distance with the lens. So it's effectively a 600 millimeter lens. and which is great in this location because the birds are far off. So yeah, let's get to it. I want to get a spot before more photographers arrive. Well, there we have it, folks. 2 days of photography in the bag, and what a great experience it has been coming up here to Kushiro, to Tsurui Mura, to photograph these tancho. I hope that you get a chance to come up here and do it sometime. Come to Hokkaido. You won't be disappointed. So many people to thank: Ueda-san and his father, Yatsumura-san at Saikuji Temple, and Junior for letting me borrow his lens once again. I could have done without the earthquake, though. Yeah, but really shook things up, didn't it? It wasn't supposed to be like this morning. There was not supposed to be any rime on the trees and any hoar frost on the branches, and it was absolutely beautiful this morning. Freezing. I've never had an experience before with a throng of photographers, a conference of cranes and a throng of photographers all in the same spot. But it was pretty cool. Stay tuned for the slideshow of Ueda-san's photos, and I'll see you next time.